a couple of different stories coming together, maybe not. We'll do a reality check on this. These three young women who were released yesterday in Cleveland, apparently having been kidnapped for 10 years. Elizabeth Smart coming out yesterday and saying that one of the reasons that she didn't cry out for help when she was walking down the street with the man who had kidnapped and raped her was because she had been taught in an abstinence-only sex education class that women are like chewing gum, and that that no man would want her after she had been chewed, she had been used, that nobody likes chewing gum. And then in the midst of this whole dress code thing and this phenomenon of slut-shaming. When I saw this story yesterday, I was talking with Louise, my wife, who also are one of our producers and the producer of our program, and I mean the big cheese producer, and I mean we've raised three kids, two girls, and we're talking about are we looking at the new American Taliban here? I mean, is this like patriarchy on parade? Is this misogyny starting to creep around the edges of our culture? Or is this just, schools trying to have some sort of reasonable order? And I think that I wanted to get Annie-Rose Strasser's opinion on this. Annie-Rose is the Deputy Managing Editor of ThinkProgress, which is where I first saw this story. It's titled, How Slut-Shaming Has Been Written into School Dress Codes Across the Country. And the former press assistant to Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman-Schultz. Annie-Rose, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. First of all, I just threw out a whole bunch of stuff. Do you want to pull on any of those strings or whatever, or shall I start with a very specific question?
Well, I mean, I think that you hit a bunch of notes that I think make a lot of sense together. Obviously, there's a very big difference between a woman being kidnapped in Cleveland and a school telling a girl what not to wear. But I do think that there is an interesting connection here in terms of just women's bodies, their ownership over their own bodies, people telling them what not to do and what to do with their bodies, and sort of putting the onus on a woman to make the choices that will make her most safe. I think that's what a lot of this comes down to. And specifically when you look at dress codes, you're talking about sort of how women are told that what they wear and how they present themselves sort of sexualizes them or desexualizes them, and therefore makes them a target or not.
Yeah, and isn't that the central message of the Taliban? I mean, I don't mean this to be hyperbolic. I have actually talked with, I think it was maybe it was Jeremy Scahill and I. It was somebody who had been a reporter in the Middle East for a number of years and spent a lot of time over there, who knew a bunch of Taliban guys and who said, the whole thing is, the whole rationale is if women show any parts of their body, then men will, run out of control and end up, raping them or whatever. And therefore the women have to completely cover themselves up. And if the end result of that logic is the burqa, are we going down that road?
Well, I don't necessarily feel comfortable comparing school principals to the Taliban, but I will say
I will.
But I will say that I think, it stems from the same thing, which is that we have a society, a patriarchal society, which has told women that they are basically property of men, or there for men's pleasure, and therefore that they should be told what to do based on how men will react. You can see it in cases like the Steubenville case. A young girl was raped. Two men have been convicted of raping her. And she was told she was drunk, or she was told that she didn't act correctly, or she was told that she was implying, if not saying, that she wanted to have sex with them based on her outfit or based on the fact that she had been drinking. And a lot of times that's what we see, is that women are told men will do these things and it's your responsibility to react. As opposed to when you talk about men and the crimes they commit, they're told you have agency over yourself. You make these decisions and you have to be responsible for your actions. Or they're told you can sit there and do what you will and make sure there are no distractions in your life. And when we look at the way that women are treated, they're basically told to always be on the defensive, whereas men are told to always be on the offensive. It plays out in the workplace in the way that women are supposed to be in the workplace. It plays out in the football field, I think, is one of the places where we see it, and certainly it plays out in dress codes. We don't have dress codes for men like we have for women, and a lot of that is because women are told to wear certain things that make them look appealing to men, and men aren't really told the same to make themselves appealing to women.
There's been a lot of everybody learns about Martin Luther King. Everybody learns about the civil rights movement. And yet women were considered the property of their husbands up until the turn of the last century. I mean, there were laws on the books in states as late as 1900 that said that if a woman's husband died, that a male executor would be appointed. He would get 1/3 of her estate. He would decide what religion or by whom her children were raised. And and the only courts that she could do anything in were courts that were specifically set up for retarded people or for children. And in other words, she had to have a male representative at court. In a very real way, aren't women the last of the group of the various minority groups, and which is kind of weird to say because women are a majority in society, to be liberated, and I use that word advisedly, realizing that even now the situation.
Yeah, I think one of the areas where we can look at how women are still very much considered property is abortion access. Men sitting in state houses across the country and on Capitol Hill in the United States nation, the capital here. Right. Are making decisions about what women can do. They're telling women that they can have an abortion at a certain date or they can't at another, that when there's a fetal heartbeat, suddenly it becomes irresponsible for a woman to make the choice about what's right for her. And it has nothing to do with the woman's life. And there's very, very little female input. 17 women in the Senate is somehow groundbreaking. It's not as though we have actual parity.
And the morning after pill,
I think,
pardon me interrupting. But there's we have a limited time. Forgive my interruption, but there is. Can you talk about slut-shaming?
Sure. So it's a term that I think is pretty new and is just sort of broken into the mainstream, but is a really valuable one. Because what we do is when we talk about how women dress, we talk about them being sluts, as though by wearing a certain thing, they're inviting sexual interaction. The two things are actually not linked. We don't even have the same word for men. There's no word equivalent of slut for what a man can do or say or wear. But when we talk about women, we talk about how they will behave and how that behavior, basically is the same as inviting a sexual interaction. So we don't talk about consent. A woman can't really consent in the same way to a sexual interaction because we assume that she's consented by wearing a low-cut, blouse. And a lot of that then translates into social interactions where you have someone saying, that girl shouldn't be trusted because she's wearing a low-cut shirt.
So in the minute we have left, what do we do about this? Where do we go with this?
I think we just need to give agency back to women. We need to say that you can make your own choices about what you wear and what you do with your body and how you behave. And those things are not a man's to control or dictate or comment on even. It's not the place of a principal to say, your outfit looks too slutty. I would prefer if my school principal never said something like that to me because I would hope that he's not thinking about me like that. Yeah,
there you go. Which is another indication of this whole role thing. Brilliant. Annie-Rose Strasser, Deputy Managing Editor at ThinkProgress and thinkprogress.org, of course, the website. This brilliant piece, how slut-shaming has been written into school dress codes across the country. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Great having you on. We'll be back.